All Over the Road New Orleans is brought to you by CoinTrader Inc. Mind your money, and recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Last thing before I turn it over to the Admiral, I just wanted to make sure we address this from the White House. I know there have been questions and concerns about this, but there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. Again, there is no indication of aliens or terrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. Wanted to make sure that the American people knew that, all of you knew that, and it was important for us to say that from here because we've been hearing a lot about it. I'm just, I loved E.T., the movie, but I'm just going to leave it there.
E.T. phone.
E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home.
This is a conversation that may lead us down a road that may turn out it's not of human origin.
Fighter aircraft assigned to U.S. Northern Command took down the object within the last hour.
But there is no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns.
Here at All Over the Road New Orleans, the podcast, we'd like to thank all of our listeners, followers, and subscribers for 4 good seasons, and welcome to the show.
He's been known to show up at the most unusual times. He once cleared a bar room with a jawbone of an ass. He takes his bicycle all over the country. He's an Ironman, but sometimes he falls off. He's the most interesting man in the world.
I don't usually listen to podcasts, but when I do, it's All Over the Road New Orleans.
Okay. Let's try that again. Go ahead.
I don't normally listen to podcasts, but when I do, it's All Over the Road New Orleans.
Now, you gotta sound like you're not reading it, interesting man.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to sound more interesting. But
I don't usually listen to podcasts, but when I do, it's All Over the Road New Orleans.
I like the way he says New Orleans. How about you, Danny?
I like it. Yeah, I think we'll go take number 3.
You're gonna take number 3?
Take number 3.
Take number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, you are at the right place. You do not want to miss this show because we promised you more stories, and more stories. And on this show, you're gonna get stories from the storyteller. You saw the commercials for Dos Equis about the most interesting man in the world. This is the real most interesting man in the world. And he is on right now, All Over the Road New Orleans, the podcast.
Interesting man in the world? What are you doing here?
Oh, yeah. You know it. You love it. You can't live without it. It's All Over the Road, the podcast New Orleans, the king of all podcasting. Me and Ted Stemper, and the most interesting man in the world.
Danger. To everyone he meets, he stays a stranger.
Yes, he does.
With every move he makes,
Every move.
another chance he takes.
The sheep.
Odds are he won't live to see tomorrow. Secret agent man. Secret agent man.
You know, I almost wanted to do that over, Ted, because I kind of stepped on the intro.
Yeah, well, I can respect that when you're not going back and, Teddy, edit that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like it was, man.
Yeah.
You couldn't go back and just, we were talking a few minutes before we went on the show about the old days.
Yes.
About how, it was like it would be a big old master control room of stuff and equipment. Now it's like a couple microphones and a little whatever.
Any schmuck can do this.
Yeah,
Any schmuck in the world.
And you could go back and do it again, and nobody would know.
Yeah. Oh, no?
Yeah, well, if we did it again, nobody would know that you totally stepped on that vocal.
Well, they know if... Of course they're going to know.
Well, they're going to know because you're not going back.
All right. Well, of course
Anyway.
I'm going back.
So I got to take back everything I said then. Okay.
It's All Over the Road, the podcast. And on this show, it's the most interesting man.
It's a short one. It's pretty tricky.
It's a tricky intro.
Hit it.
Wait.
Start again. All right.
It's Johnny Rivers. It's All Over the Road, the podcast New Orleans, and with us today is the most interesting man in the world.
There's a man who leads a life of danger. stranger.
Leaves a life of danger, baby.
Wow.
To everyone he meets, he stays
Interesting man. Welcome to the show, baby.
Everyone he meets, he stays a stranger?
He stays a stranger.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is it true?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He stays a stranger
Yeah.
until he really knows you and loves you, and then he's around. He's around.
A lot.
Yeah. How you doing, man?
Couldn't be better.
Can be better.
Life is great.
Now, you don't usually do stuff like this, so please,
I usually don't.
listeners, this is not a guy that's a professional broadcaster. He's not a professional podcaster. He's not an entertainer.
Yeah.
He's just an interesting man. Mm-hmm. Okay? And just to tell you one little, before you start telling us some of your great stories, and you've got a lot of them, don't forget to tell the one about the guy with no arms and no legs. Can I tell that one?
Sure.
Okay.
We can do that.
Yeah, don't make sure you don't forget that one. So Interesting Man does a lot of stuff. He travels all over the world. He's an avid, biker, runner, swimmer. He does all that Iron Man stuff.
He's in shape.
He's in very good shape. He's in very good shape.
Very good shape.
And when I used to live in Houston, he used to come and visit me often.
Okay.
And one morning, Martha was coming down the back staircase, and Johnny was at the breakfast bar reading some emails. Teddy, what do you want?
I'm not loud enough?
You're loud enough. You're loud enough.
Okay,
'Cause
good.
If I turn you up anymore, you're distorted.
Is that right?
Yes.
No distortion.
I know what I'm doing. Okay, so Martha comes down the back staircase, and Johnny has his laptop. Now, he can't see her. She's behind him. Okay. His laptop's up, just like mine is right now. It's up.
Yeah.
And he's reading this email in Chinese, and he's laughing. Like he's...
Do you remember that?
I mean, tell us, would you like to comment on that, Interesting Man, that story?
I kind of vaguely remember that story.
Because that would be like, what, when you lived in Houston, it was like 5, 6, 7 years ago?
that was
No, it's 15.
More than that.
15
Oh, yeah, it was
years
right after Katrina.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you got to go back.
That was a long time
So you want to
ago.
explain that? Or no?
Yeah.
Were you just laughing at the text, the typeset,
It was
the
more,
font?
more the font.
The Chinese have fonts? Are there different fonts in
The
Chinese?
font.
Of course there are.
Yes.
But Johnny's the most interesting man in the world, and we've done a lot of goofy stuff together over the years, Ted.
Yeah.
Haven't known him quite as long as I've known you, but almost as long.
Okay.
And if you listen to this podcast, we had DeMario Davis on, which was a great show. If you haven't listened to the DeMario Davis podcast, you need to go back and listen to it because it's awesome.
Yeah.
So we don't usually get DeMario Davis on here.
No, and I will give you credit, man. I got to give you credit because you were persistent with that because you've been saying it for a couple of years.
Sure.
I was like, I'll be honest with you, I started to have my doubts if he was ever going to come on. And of course, I wasn't there for some odd reason. Well, I guess because he could only do it at night.
He was paranoid. He didn't want too many people.
But he had Nick.
Yeah.
You had Nick.
Well, yeah, I had to have Nick.
Nick didn't really talk a lot, but he was here to support.
To make sure nothing broke.
At any rate, you pulled it off. You got DeMario Davis on the podcast. So, even though you couldn't say his wife's name correctly, or I don't even know.
Yeah.
Tamala, whatever.
It's Tamala.
Yeah.
I called her
and
Tamala.
he was cool. He was cool. He was a great guest.
Yeah.
I mean, he talked about his foundation. He talked about, the award he's up for, which at this time, I guess, still hasn't happened, right?
It's this weekend.
It's called,
NFL
for the Pro Bowl?
Yeah, it's called NFL Honors. They do
Okay,
it.
but what about the Walter Payton Award?
It's the same thing.
That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, the Man of the Year. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see how that turns
See how
out.
that goes. But anyways, it's just to recap it. We don't usually have big stars. I've been talking about Justin Timberlake for 5 years, and eventually that gave me hope that we will eventually have Justin Timberlake on this show.
Eventually you'll come through with that. So not to put pressure on the most interesting man, but yeah, you're following up a big show.
He is.
And now you have me.
Now I have you.
I mean, we're on a roll here, to say the least. So you're just to get to know the interesting man a little bit, just a little bit. He may not answer all my questions. You know how I am. I don't really know my boundaries sometimes. But are you from New Orleans?
Yes.
Okay.
You heard him say Nolans.
Nolans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Local guy.
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
Yeah.
And he's the most interesting man in the world. And you would only think that because I think interesting people are from New Orleans. So that makes perfect sense.
Right.
Now I'm going to ask you a point yes or no question by the time this show is over. I'm not going to ask it right away. But when I do ask you that question, will you give me a truthful, right or wrong answer?
Depends on the question.
That's a good answer. Interesting man. Interesting man. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the time. I'll tell you what. Why don't you give us one that you just feel like you should tell? I'm not going to tell you which ones to tell. I know a lot of them, so I don't want to handcuff you here.
Well, I mean, you did mention the one about the man with no legs and no arms.
Right.
That I would head.
Now, I say no arms, no legs. Should I say legs first?
We live in America, so you can Say it any way you want.
You know what you call a guy with no arms and no legs on the front porch?
What's that?
Matt.
Oh,
Matt.
Yeah. A guy with no arms, no legs hanging on the wall?
Not your son-in-law.
No. No arms, no legs hanging on the wall?
I get it.
That's art.
So tell us about that.
Wait. That's art. No arms, hanging on the wall.
No arms, no legs, no legs, no arms. Whatever the case. What did this happen at? Tell us about that. I'm intrigued. To say
Well,
the
it
least.
was on a trip to Peru.
So you're flying.
I am
obviously.
flying, yes.
Now, did you bring anything back from Peru?
I rarely bring anything back when I travel.
Okay. All right. Because, Peru.
I'm fortunate to bring myself back.
Exactly. Okay, so you're going to Peru.
Going to Peru. I'm in Atlanta. This is probably about 20 years ago.
Okay.
Before Delta, it was Eastern Airlines.
Oh, okay.
So it's been a while ago.
Yeah,
so
okay.
probably at least 20 years ago.
More than that, probably.
And I'm at the gate. They call my name. Interesting man.
Interesting man. Pick up the white courtesy phone.
So I go up to the gate agent, and she says, would you mind? We have a person that's traveling that may need some assistance, on the flight. And I said, sure. I'll
You
be happy.
being an interesting and very giving man, you say yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so, unbeknownst to me, when she introduces me to him, he literally does not have any arms or legs. He has some prosthetics that he puts on for legs, and he has some crutches that he uses that kind of helps him walk. So he can walk.
Well, and just to clarify something, the guy did like to swim. He liked to float in the water, and his name was, he had no arms, no legs. His name was Bob. Okay, go ahead. Interesting man.
Yes. So we get on the plane, and so Bob is sitting next to me, and they bring us a meal. So, of course, I had to cut up the food, basically feed him. As it turns out, he was an artist. He lived in Peru, and he traveled all over the world.
Wait, whoa. Artist,
I know.
Artist with no arms.
Well, yeah. Well, let me just say this.
So,
the guy, he could feed himself, but it wasn't appropriate because he feeds himself with his feet.
Okay.
Okay, so they didn't want that on the flight, I presume.
I thought he had no arms, no legs.
Well, but he had a prosthetic. But how does he feed himself?
Well, he basically he had stubs for arms.
Okay.
And,
all right.
And one of his legs was deformed, but it did have some toes.
Okay.
But basically did use prosthetics.
Okay, gotcha.
For both of his legs. But one of the legs was shortened, and it did have some toes on it. And he would use his foot, which the foot that he had, he would use that for eating, and he would also use that for painting.
Okay.
And so he was coming from Washington.
Can I say this is very interesting? Can I say that?
Sure.
Thank you, interesting man. Thank you. Go ahead. Continue.
So so I help him with his food. I help him eat, and then he decides he had broken English. I had broken Spanish, so we got along great. He would say something funny. He would just crack up, cackling, laughing. We would laugh, at various corny jokes or whatever, laugh at his trouble with eating. And so he wanted some beer.
He decided he wanted to have a few beers on this flight. He
decided cerveza.
Okay, now when he said cerveza, did it click in your mind? This guy starts drinking cerveza. What's next?
Yes, it did. Okay. It did kind of enter my mind that this could be a problem.
Yes, exactly. So, and once you break the seal, they say, and you gotta go.
But you're in, like you're helping the guys. How do you back out? Okay, so you're just kind of keeping an eye on.
Was he drinking Dos Equis?
No.
Okay, all right.
Didn't have that available.
That's a shame.
So after about the fourth beer, and this is about a 7-hour flight. And we're about 3 hours into the flight. He goes, amigo.
Yes.
Necesito que ir a baño.
A baño.
A baño.
Baño.
Yes, which means I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I asked for the prosthetic leg, and we go up to the front of the plane. I tell the flight attendant,
did you have to help him on with the prosthetic leg and everything? So are you in the front row? Are you back in coach somewhere?
No, we're back in coach.
Okay.
We're back in coach. So
and he's sitting right next to you.
he's sitting next. We didn't have anybody in the middle seat, so
Okay.
we did have an empty seat in between us. So I did help him, even though normally he would not need help or he would ask for some help. That he would kind of with his 2 pegs for arms, would be able to maneuver the prosthetics on. So anyway, so we get those on. We get up to the front of the plane. I tell the flight attendant, he needs help to go to the bathroom, and she proceeds to look at me with bewildered eyes, saying, "Well, you're going to need to help him." So at that time, they had a curtain in the front of the plane.
Right.
And so I helped him get into the bathroom. We kind of left the door open because, of course, both of us aren't going to fit into the bathroom together on the plane.
No, and especially today you couldn't. I could barely fit in them.
So I had the pleasure of helping him go to the bathroom. So that ended up taking place about 3 times.
Oh, jeez.
Over the duration of the flight.
Now, why you? Did you ever figure that out? Why they picked you?
I never know.
And then you went to the flight attendant, and then they just put it back on you.
Yes.
I mean, hey,
basically, yeah.
You agreed to this, sir.
So how many beers did he have on the whole flight?
He probably had about seven beers.
7 beers. Yeah, that'll get you peeing. That'll get you flowing.
Yeah. So as we know, the bathrooms on the flights are very small. So how did that work out? I mean,
he just said they had to keep the door open.
Yeah,
we had to keep the door open.
They had a curtain at that time that they'd closed the curtain and basically.
Yeah, in the old days they had a curtain that would separate the front of the plane by the cockpit.
Correct.
But and that was before they had doors that you can't get, indestructible doors after the 9/11 thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was very interesting, man. That was interesting.
And again, I really don't know why they chose me. I guess it was God ordained.
Yeah.
Well, were you originally supposed to sit next to him?
No.
So they put you next to him after you agreed to assist him.
Correct.
That's interesting. That is a
man. Very, very interesting
Yes.
story.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, studio audience, for that.
Yeah. So did you get all your work done or whatever you're doing in Peru? How was the trip? It was a good trip?
Yes. I've gone down to Peru frequently and all of South America for the most part.
Is that right?
Latin America, South America, Mexico, Brazil.
Yeah.
Does a lot of traveling. He does a lot of traveling. Interesting man here. This interesting man. Now, what about the story? You had an accident. Were you in Peru again? Was this in Peru as well?
That's interesting that, yes.
Yeah.
Now that we talk about, the incident with the young gentleman that I was able to help, yes.
And now, I wouldn't go back to Peru. You should stay away from there.
No, I'm heading there next week.
He's a hardhead. Okay, so now you're going to Peru the second time. And this was somewhat recently, last 5 years or something, wasn't it?
No, this was September of 2015.
Okay.
So 8 years.
All right.
And I've been fortunate over the years to be able to, as you said in the intro, to do a lot of biking, a lot of swimming. I've done 3 full Ironman events, a number of half Ironman events.
Tell people what an Ironman event is in case they don't know.
A full Ironman event is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a marathon run, 26.2 mile run.
That's freaking unbelievable.
Wow. Where do they do that?
They do it all over the world.
They have them all over.
They do it all
one
over
here?
the world.
New Orleans has one?
New Orleans used to have a 70.3, which is a half Ironman.
Oh.
So the 3 Ironman I have completed have been, the first one was for my midlife crisis event when I turned 50. Was in Phoenix, Arizona. And then the other 2 was in Cozumel.
Okay, and I remember you did the half one here in New Orleans because I remember you swimming in Lake Pontchartrain.
Correct.
And I said, boy, that's nasty. Man.
So I've been fortunate when I travel, I try to incorporate some exercise, mainly a lot of running. But over the years, I've befriended some very good cyclists, professional cyclists in Peru, namely Arequipa, Peru.
Hello, Eric. Make sure you share the show with them.
And so in September of 2015, I was on a biking trip with 2 friends. One of them had to leave early, which probably if he would not have left early, it would have been a different outcome. But regardless, it is what it is. So we'd gone out about 30 miles. Arequipa, Peru is at about 6,000 feet elevation and a lot of desert countryside, a lot of Indian villages that are outside of Arequipa, Peru. So we had gone out about 30 miles, and we were returning back to the city of Arequipa. And
now you're not on a road bike.
Yes.
You're on a mountain bike.
No, we are on a road bike.
A road bike, okay.
Yes, we're on a road bike. And so the person, Vanyos was his name, who I was cycling with, we were descending the road after we had climbed 2 mountainsides. And so we were descending this one section of the road, and he was a better descender than I. So he was a little bit ahead of me. And so I come around one switchback, and I see him going around the next switchback. And I said, okay, I'm not that far behind him. So I kind of picked up the speed a little bit. And then when I got to that switchback, it was a hairpin switchback. And I'm doing about 20 miles an hour. And as I go into that turn, I quickly realize I'm not going to be able to make that turn. And so I cross, I'm putting on both of the brakes of the bike, the back wheel starting to skid. And at this point, I'm trying to decide if I should lay the bike down or not. I don't lay the bike down. I do a face plant into a side of a mountain. And then I fall down about 10 feet onto my back. And initially, everything is fuzzy. I'm trying not to go unconscious. We're at 7,000 feet elevation. My left arm is paralyzed at the time, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. It takes about probably 20 minutes from Vanyos to come back to see what had happened. And I'm laying in a dry bed ditch on my back in excruciating pain. My legs were paralyzed initially. I'm starting to have some feeling come back to them. We have no cell coverage. You have to wait for a car to come. He tells them, go to the next town, call for help, call for an ambulance. And so after an hour and a half, a transport vehicle comes. They put me on a flatboard, put me in the back of the truck. Then it's about another 40 minutes to get to the hospital. So by the time I get to the hospital, it's probably 2.5, 3 hours after the accident.
So you, interesting man, were injured and injured bad.
Injured bad.
Injured bad. And I tell you what, the story gets even better from here. You haven't heard nothing yet. Take a quick break. We'll be right back with the most interesting man in the world on All Over the Road, the podcast. Nolans.
Interesting man in the world? What are you doing here?
Okay, in these modern times, people do not know what to do with discretionary income. They don't know what to do with the money they have that's extra. Do I put in the stock? I don't know. Do I buy real estate? My interest rates are just, what do I do? I got money. People are talking about the dollar going away. What do I do? I wait for this big token from the federal government? You have to talk to a company that has your best interests in mind. And that company is the company that supports this podcast. It's called Coin Trader Inc. They deal in all the precious metals, rare coins, and they're a company that you know that if you do business with them, they're not just going to scroll it away and be greedy people. They're going to give back. They're going to give back to, charities and ministries like Rancho 3M in Mexico, like One Heart NOLA, like the New Orleans Mission, like Indeed and Truth Ministries. This is a company that takes care of their customers, and then whatever they get, they give away. Don't you want to do business with that company? It's real easy. You just call them. You tell them the King of All Podcasting sent you. You call 504-267-6004 and tell them that the King of All Podcasting sent you.
The All Over the Road listener comment line. Say whatever you want. 24 hours a day. Tell a story. Give your opinion.
You'll be on the next podcast. So go ahead. Don't be shy. Call 504-603-6753.
Okay, we're back with the most interesting man in the world. When we left, he was telling about his trip to Peru. Just to recap, he's an avid biker. He's in the mountains of Peru. He's biking. The guy has a terrible fall. He's hurt. He's hurt bad. He's on his way to the hospital. He gets to this hospital in Peru. And what kind of hospital do you get to when you get to Peru? Who knows? What happened?
Well, I found out real quick type of hospital. After they finally take x-rays, first they wanted guarantee of payment before they would even do anything. So they finally take x-rays, and I realize I'm in trouble when they get the x-rays and they put them up to the window.
Yeah. Well, hey, light is light.
No computer,
Yep.
no.
Yeah.
It's basically put them up to the window, and just by looking at the x-rays, they say you have nothing broken, but you have a collapsed lung. And we have to wait for a specialist to come in.
A Peruvian specialist.
Now, again, Arequipa is a 2-hour flight from Lima. So it's an old mining town out in the middle of nowhere, and the hospital probably fits appropriately for where I'm located. So they finally get the specialist that comes in. They put a chest tube in me, and I've been in a number of crashes, where I've broken my collarbone, probably two times, and I know there's a lot more going on than just a collapsed lung.
So when they tell you don't have any broke bones, you're like, I don't know about that.
Exactly, because I'm in excruciating pain. My skin is very sensitive to touch on my chest. My shoulders are, in a lot of excruciating pain as well.
So at that point, could you move yet?
Fortunately, the feeling came back to all my extremities. My arm was just partially paralyzed initially. But by the time the transport vehicle came, by the time I got to the hospital, I had all my feelings back to my legs and arms.
Now, interesting, man. This is very interesting, obviously, but it's not as interesting as what happens next. Now, you start thinking this, and you start saying to yourself, I'm in Peru. They're holding up x-rays to the window. I got to get out of here.
Exactly.
Right? Isn't that what you're thinking?
Exactly, because this happened on a Saturday. Again, in a lot of pain. The chest tube is in this large glass bottle that's in a cage. And I know I've got to get back to New Orleans because I don't want any surgeries to take place there. I need to get back home.
Yeah, even Oshner is better than them.
For sure.
Sorry about that.
So by the time Wednesday came, I knew I needed to leave. Fortunately, from the waist down, I can walk. Fortunately, I'm in very good shape. Because of all the.
So you're already there from Saturday to Wednesday? You said Wednesday you need to leave?
Saturday on Saturday is when the crash took place. On Wednesday is when I finally
You started to
left the
smell a
hospital.
rat. I got to get out of here.
I got to get out of here. They didn't want me to leave, and I just said, I've got to get out of here. So Vanyos, the friend, that I was biking with, basically came, picked me up, brought me to the airport. They did give me the doctor gave me a written slip that, I could travel. I still had a chest tube in my chest that was draining into a plastic container at this point. They got rid of the glass bottle in a cage and put the tubing into a plastic box, basically. And so Vanyos helps me get to the airport. I go to the first checkout airline, and they look at me. I give them the slip. The doctor said it's okay for me to travel. I basically have the chest tube that's draining into the box connected to my belt. I have a neck brace around my neck. And
that's not funny, but I can just picture it.
We can laugh about it now. And so I go to the first airline, and he brings over a couple of different people, having discussions about it. They finally make a couple of phone calls, and after about 20 minutes, they come back to me and say, "Sorry, we can't take the risk of you traveling with your lung collapsing,"
which is understandable, somewhat,
I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. So Vanyos and I said, come on, let's go to the restaurant that was there at the airport, because I hadn't eaten since the crash. When it was all said and done.
They didn't feed you there?
They did, but the food was terrible. They gave me one pill that was for pain, and I hallucinated the entire night. Dogs were in the room barking, people talking to me, my heart racing. I prayed the entire
Were those
night.
the ones you brought back and you gave them to me?
Yes.
Okay. I thought
What,
so.
the pills or the dogs?
The pills.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I took them off his hands.
Yes, Vic said he'd dispose of them.
I
for
would.
me.
Properly.
So I told my friend Vanyas, I have to get back to New Orleans. So the only thing I could come up with was to basically hide everything in a grocery bag, stuff all the tubing from my chest down in my pants and put the plastic box in a grocery bag, check everything because I had no strength in my arms. I couldn't carry even a computer because as it turned out, I had a bicep muscle that was torn. But regardless, so then I went to a different airline and bought a ticket to get to Lima. I had to get to Lima because I had a midnight flight from Lima to Houston. So my goal was to
Don't show him the note. You should have not. Don't even show him the note.
No. At this point, I'm not.
Well, you learned that after the first time.
Oh yes. At this point, I'm just trying to be a normal passenger without saying anything.
Right.
Had everything hidden, had a little light jacket over my arm that was kind of covering the tubing that was going underneath my shirt. Said I need to get to Lima, bought a ticket, checked the bags.
Did you look at the bag? What's in the bag?
Well, when I went through security, this is buying the ticket at the ticket counter.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so then I decided to go to a different airline and told Vanyos need to get something to eat, figured this what we're going to do, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to get to Lima. And we came up with the idea of going to a different airline. So basically went to a different airline with everything hidden and just acted like a normal passenger. Checked everything. Everything was hidden as far as the tubing, that was coming out of my chest.
Where was it hidden? I'm curious. Where would you hide that? In your luggage?
No, this was the tubing coming out of my chest.
Yeah.
Well, he had a jacket on, like a baggy jacket.
Okay. And when I had the tubing down in my pants.
Ah, okay. So they really couldn't see and notice it.
No, I still had the tubing that was connected to a plastic box. So I had to put the plastic box in a plastic grocery bag.
Okay.
And then I put a light jacket over my arm to cover where the tubing was coming out of my shirt connected to the plastic box.
I could have never gotten away with that because everything I wear is so snug. There's no way I could have possibly gotten away with something like that.
You'd have
Johnny
to.
can't because he's slender. He's a slender fella.
So the first test was going to get through security, but then I thought security doesn't know what the airline is approving or not approving. The main thing they're looking for is what? Drugs and explosives.
Yeah.
So basically,
because I don't know if the dogs at the airports they can't sniff out tubing.
No.
Oh no, they're not looking
Right?
for that.
They're
right?
looking for drugs.
So
exactly. Drugs.
Explosives.
But like if that was me, I'd be like, oh, paranoid.
Well, that's you.
That's me.
That's you. You're naturally paranoid.
It's not him.
No, it's not him. He's the most interesting man. He doesn't get paranoid.
Yeah.
And again, I was on a mission.
Yep.
I had to get back.
Yeah.
Back home.
Someone getting a call?
I don't know. Somebody is.
Somebody again. Oh. Okay. I didn't know we had active phones.
There's a phone in here now. I don't know if I told you that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I need to disconnect that thing. Go ahead.
Okay.
Interesting, man.
Go ahead.
That's not interesting.
Sorry
but you
to
are,
interrupt.
Sir, but
So,
you are.
So the first test was getting through security and Arequipa. So, of course,
They go through customs.
well, that was in Lima.
Okay. And then customs, they said, are you bringing anything back with you? And you said, yes, I'm bringing back a collapsed lung, if you don't mind. I'm going to bring one of those back. How much is that?
Do you mind?
What are you declaring?
So I was able to get through security in Arequipa. And then before I get on the plane in Arequipa, I have the chest tube that's got water in it to equalize the pressure to try to help keep my lung expanded. And when I'm going to the bathroom, that kind of tilts over and all the water spills out.
Oh, God.
And so I'm thinking, okay, is this going to be a problem? So fortunately, I have a good doctor friend, Richard, who I called. He said, don't worry about it. So at this point, I'm getting on the plane regardless. So anyway, I get on the plane, get to Lima. So that was, it was a 7 p.m. flight on Wednesday of that week. Land in Lima at 9 p.m. I have a midnight flight from Lima to Houston. So I have to get through customs.
How long is that flight?
from Lima to Houston's about a 6 to 7 hour flight.
Okay.
It had to be just misery.
It was, again, I was in excruciating pain.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad when I have to pee and I can't, and here you are.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was just, my back was just in excruciating pain, and just my shoulders, my arms, from the waist up, I was just in a lot of pain.
But at any point, did it cross your mind, maybe this isn't a very good idea, I should have stayed in that hospital?
No, never.
Not even in that pain, and that excruciating pain?
No, because, again, I wasn't eating. The food was terrible.
Nobody was washing their hands there. Nobody.
They didn't have anything to help with the pain. The one pill they had, they didn't have any morphine. The one pill was this, blue pill they gave me that hallucinated. So every time after that, I pretended taking that pill.
And then they gave you purple haze is what they gave you.
I don't know what it was, but it wasn't good.
So you just focused, I got to get home. I got to get home.
I've got to get home. And again, fortunately from, all the Ironman events, I was mentally and physically strong.
Yeah.
So I was determined to get back home. So going through customs in Lima, they did security and custom. Well, it was mainly security, in Lima. They asked, pointed to that cassette, which, what is that? And I said, it's a catheter. I didn't tell them it was a chest tube.
Good answer.
In my chest. So
that's a good idea.
It's a catheter.
So it was a catheter.
You know what I tell them if there's something fishy going on, I want them to know nothing. I just say, I'm a diabetic, and that always works.
Yeah, that's good too. That's good.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
got to have the Sam sandwich. I'm a diabetic.
Yeah. So either way, I was able to get through security, was able to get through customs, was able to get on, and of course I was worried walking on the plane, making sure everything was hidden because I didn't want flight attendants to see tubing coming out of my shirt and get curious and then, kick me off the plane and not allow me to get to Houston. But once I got to Houston, I knew at least I was back in the U.S.
Yeah.
Even if I had to drive from Houston or get somebody to come pick me up.
Yeah.
Once I got to
that
Houston,
home soil. That's what counts. So how many times on that flight did you have to use the bathroom? Did you?
Just twice.
2 times in a 6-hour flight?
2 times. Fortunately, I was in first class on the Lima to Houston.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of laying flat, and when I tried getting back up, it was just excruciating. Man. It was just excruciating. I had nothing for pain.
Nothing, and you really couldn't complain about it.
No,
because what's the issue?
No,
what do you tell them?
Yeah.
Now, when that thing leaked, you said you leaked all the water. Did that show up in the bath? Did that go on the floor? Did anybody see that? Or?
Well, it was on the floor of the bathroom. I mean, I don't know if anybody saw it or not. I didn't stick around.
Yeah.
So anyway, I get to Houston. I land in Houston around 7 a.m. I have a 9 a.m. Oh, and one other piece of information was the hospital I was staying at in Peru did not have any imaging. No.
You mean like X-rays?
MRI stuff. Yeah.
No CAT scans.
Yeah.
No nothing.
Imaging is not X-rays. Imaging is MRI. CAT scan.
Okay, Dr.
Well, I know.
Vic, Dr. Vic.
I mean, I know.
Yeah. I learned something.
I know some stuff.
Okay.
But I looked online and saw that about a half a mile away was an imaging center in Arequipa. So I got my friend Vanyos to come pick me up, and I basically left the hospital with my friend, walked out of the hospital with my big chest tube bottle that was in a cage. I had to drag that with me to the imaging center. They did a CAT scan. The radiologist there reviewed the CAT scan, said nothing broken.
No, you're not. Now you're backing up. Interesting, man. You're backing up.
I know. I'm back. That was one critical piece of information that I failed to say. That
I'll let you do that.
I did. So I got the disc from that CAT scan to bring back to the U.S. with me.
Got it.
So I finally land in New Orleans around 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning. And fortunately, the good friend that I have as a doctor, his name's Richard. Can I give him a plug?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Richard Van Langendonk, the best urologist.
Was ist los, Langendonk? Was ist noch so schnelles Nein? That's my German. Sprechen Sie Deutsch. Go ahead.
So, so he had arranged for me to immediately from the airport to go to Truro to see the pulmonologist who basically did an x-ray. He was able to take the chest tube out And then he said, immediately go see Najib Thomas, who's the best neurologist in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically give him the disc. This is that Thursday afternoon. And I'm sharing the same story with him as he's looking at the disc. And he says, by any chance, did anyone in Peru tell you that you have a broken back?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
You traveled all that way
You
with a
should have seen this thing they put him
with
in.
a broken
Oh, my
back?
God.
And
Jeez.
he says, I see at least 2 places that your thoracic is broken, maybe 3 or 4. And you also have a spot in your neck, in your cervical area, that's broken.
Yeah, now in Peru, they were telling nothing's broken. You're
Nothing is
good.
broken.
No,
You're
Yeah.
good. Just
So back up, like, did they even take X-rays in Peru? Or
They
anything?
took X-rays, but no imaging. Some things don't get picked. You know what,
So,
Teddy?
okay.
You know what, buddy?
it took X-rays, but said nothing is broken.
Yeah, he
got
said that twice, Teddy.
I'm just backing up. I just want to follow
Okay, all
through.
right.
I just want to recap
I
what
understand.
and make sure the listener to this is clear
It's
on
becoming
exactly
more interesting.
what the interesting man was going through on this.
It's becoming more interesting for Teddy the more he finds
It
out.
doesn't matter who's doing the
Yeah,
interviewing. Teddy
yeah,
never listens,
yeah,
but that's okay.
yeah.
No, it's he's beginning to realize this is getting a little serious.
Yeah,
very
yeah.
serious.
It's very serious. Yeah.
So he says, go do an MRI that evening. So I go and do the MRI, and that Friday morning, I get a call from a nurse, said, go check yourself into Crescent City Surgery. You have 4 places in your thoracic that's broken, and C3 and C4 is broken. It's cracked. And we're going to do surgery on that Monday.
Right, so
So basically,
So is that surprising to you? Like, I'm not in that much pain, or were you? Or you're like, my what's broke?
yeah, and his exact words were, "I'm surprised you either didn't die or become paralyzed."
yeah.
Yeah.
And your coccyx was fine, correct? There's nothing wrong with your coccyx.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah, because you don't have nothing happen
They
with your
did.
coccyx.
They did check it.
Yeah,
They
of course
did
they check the coccyx.
Yeah.
Of course they do. Yeah, it's a major portion of your body.
Yeah.
The coccyx. Go ahead. Interesting, man. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they basically did the surgery on that Monday. Had 2 rods, 8 pins in the thoracic in my back, and C3 and C4 got fused in my neck. And then 6 months later, I had bicep surgery on my right shoulder.
You know, I went to see him right when he got back, and he was in his family room sitting there. I went and saw him over there in Kenna, Louisiana.
Kenna.
And I'm telling you, he looked like Frankenstein. He had this thing on his head. He had this thing on his neck. I was like, my God, this big old rod in his back. I'm going, dude.
Yeah, it was bad.
And I was going, what did they give you for pain? He told me, and I said, well, I know you're not going to use it. Just hand it over. Okay, so that
Wow.
that is something. That is absolutely something.
So now I'm starting to be clear, like, why are you the most interesting man?
He's very
It's getting clearer.
Yeah.
Clearer.
Yeah.
So any, like, how do you feel since then? I don't know. When did you say when this happened?
2015.
How many years ago?
Yeah, he did say that.
15?
15.
Recap once
September
again. Recap.
He's a
15.
recapper.
Yeah, and
Going on 8 years.
did you feel any?
I got
any
nerve
uncomfortableness?
damage. I got nerve damage
Yeah.
on the base of my neck. I have a constant knife stabbing me in the base of my neck, and it radiates across my traps and into my shoulders.
Yeah.
You're still having that.
So
Still
I
having
wonder,
it.
yeah. So I wonder if I don't blame you for leaving Peru when all that happened. You know, it's just like, I got to get out of here. But did that contribute the travel time afterwards? You know, might have made it worse. I mean, is there any way to
Don't
tell
know.
that? I don't know. The doctors did say that to you or offer that information? No.
Don't know.
Yeah. But what are you going to do?
I mean, I would not have wanted to have back surgery
Yeah.
in Peru.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's All Over the Road New Orleans, the podcast. I'm Victor Delatorno with Ted Semper. We're here with the most interesting man in the world, and he's telling some unbelievable stories. Now, I want you to tell a story. Okay, let's see how well you recall it. Okay, the story about when I got sick and we were in Houston and I went to an urgent care. Do you remember that night?
I thought it was when I got in a car wreck.
Oh, I wasn't sick. You were sick. Okay. You're right.
I got in a,
You know what I was gonna say?
Who's not paying
Shut up.
attention?
You know
He's
what I was
not even
gonna
paying attention to his
Here-
own
here's what I was gonna
history.
say. Here's what I was going to say. If you're listening to this program,
Yeah.
and you know a test that both Teddy and I could take to see if we don't if we're senile, please let us know because we'd like to take that test.
Yeah. Wait, was it me or you this happened to?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Teddy, I'm senile. Teddy just doesn't listen. That's the difference. He's not senile.
My mind does wander off a little bit from time to time.
Okay, so Johnny's in town in Houston.
I'm in town in Houston.
Yeah.
You got in a car wreck.
I'm on the Beltway by the ship channel and get rear-ended by a pickup truck. And come to Vic's house. You know, I was staying with Vic and Martha at the time. And, you know, Vic and Martha, well, you know, since I got rear-ended, said, you know, let's go to an urgent care, just make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
So we go to the urgent care, and Vic and I are sitting in the waiting room, and they finally call my name. Interesting man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting man. You're up. Interesting man.
You're up next.
So, and Vic, being a good friend he is, said, I'd like to come with him. And
I want to go back there.
Yeah. And so the nurse said, only family is allowed to come back there. And without missing a beat, my good friend said,
I am his life partner.
and then,
which there's nothing wrong with it.
No. And the nurse looked at me.
No, who's going to judge that?
And the nurse looked at me and wanted confirmation. And I said, yes.
I mean, and it really fit because here you got a chubby Italian guy and a slender bald man.
Yeah.
And that usually spells life partner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we share that story often because it's classic. It never gets old.
Yeah.
It does. So if you're ever in that situation, people,
use it.
Use it. I mean, they can't do nothing about it. They can't do nothing about that.
Exactly. Especially
See, that's good because that's taking that political correctness crap or whatever you want to call it and using it to your advantage.
Exactly. And that's
because they can't question it. You're right.
No.
What are they going to do?
What are they going to do?
Wind up in court?
That's my life partner.
Yeah.
That's it. He's a nice, slender, bald man. I mean, that's my type is what it is.
That's right.
So
this was even before all the things that are going on now is going on. You know, this was, we were before our time.
You got another quick one? Got a quick one? A quick overseas, another interesting man story? Or would you like me to do it? Would you like me to tell you an interesting story that involves you and me?
Sure.
You would?
Sure.
All right. Here it comes. All right. This is how it goes. We had a very dear friend of ours pass away. As a matter of fact, I think it just made a year.
This past weekend. His name was William D. Treby. And he was a very dear friend of, and you knew him, Ted.
Yeah, I did.
A very dear friend of Johnny and I's.
Yeah.
And so Johnny and I.
Interesting man.
We're going to do it. No one's going to hear this. Interesting man. I'm sorry, Johnny.
I know. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So me, an interesting man, had this very, very dear friend, William D. Treby. You knew him, Ted.
Yes, I did.
He passed away. It's been about a year now. And so...
Has it been a year already?
It was the 31st.
Wow.
Yeah, January 31st, he passed away.
So just over a year.
Just a dear man, sweet man.
He was.
He went through a lot of crap at the end of his life with him and his wife. And it's sad how it ended. But if you want to look how it really ended, he's in heaven. And so that's beautiful. So it comes time, I get a phone call from Interesting Man. He calls me up. He goes, hey, Vic, it's me, Interesting Man. Hey, Interesting Man. I said to him. He goes, I have to go to the funeral home to pick up Bill's ashes. Would you like to come with me? I said, sure. Sounds like a good time. You get in the car with Interesting Man and you go get some of Treby's ashes. So we go to this funeral home on the West Bank. The West Bank people are on the other side of the Mississippi, the old man, Mississippi River. We go over to this little funeral home, been there about 100 years. I think it was in Algiers, right under the bridge, kind of like one of those, kind of a wacky little neighborhood. We go in there. And they bring out this box, and it's Treby's ashes, right? So I told him, I'll get it. I'll pick it up. I grabbed the box. And so we're walking out of the place. An Interesting Man says this to me. He goes, Vic, how do we know these are Bill's ashes? I said, I'm going to tell you how you know. This box is freaking heavy. I mean, Bill was a big man.
Yeah, he was.
He had kneecaps the size of basketballs.
Big bones.
Big bone boy.
He was big.
And I said, they gotta be
big Texan.
Yeah.
He's a big Texan man.
Yeah. Big Texan. El Paso.
El Paso.
And I said, they gotta be. I mean, this is a heavy box. It's just, I mean, it was a 20-pound box. I mean, that's heavy.
Yeah.
You know, it's gotta be. So we dismissed that. And so then Johnny, Interesting Man had told me that he goes, Vic, I just went and bought some vials. He goes, would you like to have some Bill's ashes? I said, hell yeah, I would. So now we had to deliver these ashes to the family. No, we're not family, but, you know, we had to
as close to family as
like family.
So the family's waiting for the ashes.
Right.
And so we crossed the river, and my house is, you know, right at by the Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans Parish, and it was on the way to go. Johnny had to drop off the ashes. Smartest Man had to go. Jeez. Interesting Man. I'm sorry, Teddy. Interesting Man had to drop off the ashes.
Yeah.
So we bring the ashes in my kitchen, and we're trying to manipulate the box and the bag so that we can scoop out some ashes and put them in these vials and put them on our keychain because we don't want Bill with us, you know.
Yeah. Right.
And you should have seen this, you know, pinching that box and trying to get the ashes all over the counter and all this kind of stuff. I mean, but then we wrapped it up exactly the way we got it, and nobody knew anything. And so to this day, Interesting Man and I have William Treatment on our keychains.
Yeah.
Tremendous blessing.
And I can understand it because he was a big guy. He was a pretty big guy. As a matter of fact, I knew him from softball team way back in, what year was that, 80s? And he played first base. And, you know, he was perfect for that position because he was so big. I mean, you could throw a ball from, I played third when you let me play, which was quite often. And because a lot of my throws.
You and Billy Ray's both.
Throws to first didn't have to be exactly on target, you know. I guess Bill Treby would.
He was pretty good ball player.
Bring it in, yeah, he was good
when we played in those days.
Yeah, I can't believe he's been gone a year already. Wow,
1 year.
Yeah.
1 year. It's something. It's something. But anyway, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the Demario Davis show that we did, be sure to go back and listen. I want to thank Demario. I want to thank Billy Rays, who was at our men's retreat down in Orange Beach, Alabama this past weekend. He's an old friend. It was absolutely awesome. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank you, Most Interesting Man, for being on this program.
This has been a lot of fun.
And I know there's many, many stories, but we can't sit here all day. And, we don't want to lose everybody. But ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for the most interesting man in the world.
Hey.
He doesn't listen to podcasts often, but when he does, Interesting Man.
All over the road? No.
He's still reading it.
No.
He's still reading.
Make sure I don't mess it up.
Well, we appreciate that. And remember.
Wait, we're not time for that yet.
Well, I want to ask him to share the show.
Okay.
But
when we cue you, you're going to say share the show. Or no, you're going to say sharing is caring. Okay, when we cue
sharing is caring.
Okay, but wait for the cue. Okay. We're going to give you an update on my veneers. I'm getting new teeth. And Teddy and I are going to take a trip to Hollywood. Yeah. I'm telling you, we're doing this.
Okay.
All right. And
look, after you pulled up the Demario Davis interview, I mean, I don't think I'll ever doubt you again.
Well, I humbly accept that compliment.
Right?
I do.
Yeah.
Very humbly accept that because humility is the soil to growth in God's kingdom.
And that's so true. Yes, it is.
Don't forget to share the show because sharing is caring. God bless you, everybody.
Yeah.
Remember, the love you give is the love you get, y'all.
Interesting man in the world. What are you doing here?
Come on, this Coin Trader Studios, we're bringing it live. And who am I? I go by the name of Darkest Night. And Jada Hoyos is the one who brings a sick beat, to which we're getting pumped for topics this week. So now you grab my grape soda and take a sip, while I turn it over to Katie, Nick, Ted, and Vic. It's all over. We're all over the road. We got a brand new show, so just lo and behold, from the bayou to the city to the burbs to the swamps, you better know what time it is when you're hearing that.
He's the most interesting man in the world.
But I mean, would refer to him as his name?
Interesting man.
Interesting. Okay, interesting man.
Interesting man.
Okay.
He's interesting man.
I can't say. No. That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking.
You say this, Teddy. You say, so interesting man.
So interesting man. Can I ask you this? Interesting man.
There you go.
Got you.
Now you got it.
The rules.
I might be tough to remember.
Yeah.
He's a professional.
If I slip up, just don't answer. Say, I don't know. Okay. No, I edited it out.
Y'all ready?
Yeah, exactly.
Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Oh, you could give me a cue.
Yeah, baby.
All right, guys, this is the most interesting man in the world. First, in World War I, he was an ambulance driver. He got injured and actually saved a few Italians. So he's one of the few Americans who got a decoration from the Italian government. Later, he moved to Paris, where he was friends with Gertrude Stein, F. Scott Fitzgerald, James Joyce, Picasso. He loved boxing and loved to drink. He broke a bunch of fishing records, including the most marlins caught in one day and the largest one. In fact, sometimes he used to fish with a submachine gun. He covered the Spanish Civil War, and during World War II, he was actually on a boat on D-Day. He was tried of war crimes because it was believed that he took charge of a French resistant unit against the Nazis and was one of the first Americans in Paris. The bar in this hotel is still named after him because the first thing he did was go there and get drunk. Oh yeah, he survived plane crashes on 2 consecutive days, had anthrax, malaria, dysentery, broke his skull. And later he was friends with Fidel Castro before he realized Castro was, a dick. He had to leave everything behind. And he won a Nobel Prize in Literature.
Yeah, baby.
All of the Road New Orleans is brought to you by CoinTrader Inc. For real-time prices on gold, silver, palladium, and platinum 24/7, go to goldpricesnow.com. That's goldpricesnow.com.
We thank you all. This is the announcer guy speaking. For 4 seasons and all over the road, the podcast, New Orleans.